we're starting and we've
And
got
yeah,
live.
we are live. Yeah,
Awesome.
it
Welcome,
says we are
Simon.
live. Good morning. How you doing?
Good, buddy. For some strange reason, can we talk about your
That's
trip
better.
overseas? Is that something we can talk
Yeah,
about?
we can talk about my trip overseas when it's happening.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I thought you were overseas, but Simon isn't overseas,
I'm
people.
not overseas.
He's in England, but he's overseas from me.
Yeah, I typically have hooked up with somebody who's as far away from me as humanly possible on the planet.
Yeah.
Never mind. Never mind for us. Never mind the east coast and west coast of America. And,
Yeah.
and a mere 3 hours time difference. You and I have an 11-hour time difference.
I went back and had a look at last week's show that we did. Cheapers, we were on for 3.5 hours.
I know. You do not know. It's made me roar with laughter.
It's just we would have kept going, but my guts was rumbling, Simon. I had to get some dinner. I could have done a Johnny Bean and probably just
eaten a burrito live.
left you and Carl at it and gone and had dinner and then come back 2 hours later.
Yeah, come back an hour later. Or you could have done what Johnny Bean, which is to have a second channel.
Oh, okay.
On which you eat burritos. Which is Johnny's latest thing. Basically, he's divided his channel up into two. So he's doing the main show, which I think is not a bad idea, to be honest. But a main show where you do the live shows, and actually main channel. That's what it does. And then he's got a second channel, which is just him doing vlogging and all sorts of other stuff. Yeah, including this week eating a burrito. Which
unfortunately, we don't have our friend John Smith, also known as Carl Van Vilsenbos, with us.
Busy as ever.
But if he is watching, if he is lurking behind the scenes, he's more than welcome to jump on. I know he had a busy day today. He's involved. He's involved in real estate, so the weekends are a busy time for him.
Yeah, no, indeed, yeah. So it's when everyone goes out and looks, isn't it? So that's all right. It's when he appears in the chat or tries to ring me.
Yeah.
Mid show.
Hey, we were just having a quick chat before we went live, and Simon and I were talking about the Gibson. Is it the Gibson case, the Gibson saga? What are we going to call it, Simon?
I think saga. Ongoing saga of Gibson goes mad collectively.
Yeah. Well, I think what we should do is probably talk about something that's happened. You were saying in the EU. Do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, the big news in our circles is that Gibson have been countersued by Dean now.
Yeah.
For their Dean is saying that Gibson has sent restraint of trade letters to some suppliers, to shops.
Really?
Suppliers. Yeah, that's what the countersuit is about. The Dean countersuit is about the fact that they have been, the shops apparently have been sent a letter by Gibson to say that you must cease and desist letters from selling Dean guitars.
Really?
Yeah. Which seems a very strange thing to do. I have to say, it's as ever with these things.
So Anderton's in the UK, which is like a huge music retailer, they probably would have sent them letters saying, if you keep selling Dean guitars, we're going to stop supplying you Gibsons.
Well, yeah. I haven't done Anderton's. You're pleased to know that, but they've done some in the US. And it just seems. I haven't seen the letter. I don't know what these things are like. There's news and then there's the truth of what's going on. But if they have, you can't imagine. I can't imagine a scenario where that anybody thinks that's a good idea. This links into our conversation about the whole Gibson scenario, what they're doing, and the way they're going about it. And you think, and my view is that several views really. One is that they and I'm sure everyone knows this, but that they lost. They had a Flying V trademark.
That's correct.
Appeal rejected in the EU courts.
Yes.
Because basically trying to trademark something 60 years after you made it is closing the stable door after the horse has bolted. I mean, you're just too late. If you're doing it, 6 months, and and to be honest, I mean, I think that it's. You wonder why. You think it's just not worth it. Now you can't trademark something that somebody. Dean has been making a Flying V guitar for 40 years. One is tempted to say that in non-legal circles, it's a bit late to somehow to start, going after people. I think going after Gibsons and completely fake stuff, that's fine, and all companies do that, and you're trying to protect them, and I think that's absolutely fine, and you just get on with it, and I think making a big scene out of it is odd, to be honest.
I wasn't aware that Dean had countersued, and I wasn't aware that they posted out letters of a cease and desist. That's just that's bizarre.
To shops, to retailers saying, you're not allowed to. I mean, that seems to be, excuse me, quite a bizarre thing to do. And especially. I mean, I don't know if in America I presume have innocent until proven guilty, and people get on with stuff until they're otherwise told to, kind of thing. So I find it really difficult to really understand what Gibson's actual kind of corporate plan is, if you like. I was saying to you earlier, that for my view, and I think most people's view, they need to get on with building quality guitars. That's their major issue is not, Dean guitars, because I don't think that anybody with half, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but goes into a shop and says, "Oh look, I'm going to buy that Dean instead of that Les Paul." I don't think anyone does that.
I agree with you, Simon. I think what Gibson should be doing, and both of us are guitar nuts. Gibson should be supporting the whole idea of getting people to play guitars. Clapton came out a year ago and was amazed when a reporter told him that guitar figures have dropped, sales have dropped remarkably from when he started 50 years ago, and Gibson have got a bigger marketing strategy to achieve if they're concerned about the legacy of their company and what they've achieved in the past. And they're talking about continuity and the historic legacy. Get out there and sell guitars.
Yeah. And I know they've got a history of being litigious, haven't they, at Gibson? They seem to, a bit of sort of this, we're going to go to court, and we're going to do stuff, and they don't seem to get very far, do you? And you'd think that they would, lesson learned, on everything you do. It's like these court, and I'm sure Fender have had a few of them as well, where they try to copyright body shapes and stuff, and it just doesn't work. This the one that they just lost in the European Union was against Warwick Framers, and they're just not, they're not getting anywhere, they never get anywhere, and it having not copyrighted, trademarked this stuff, 50 years ago or 60 years ago when it was 1958 when they did it. No, 1958. I know that's 61 years ago. I know when that is.
Sure.
So that you just think to yourself, as I say, that for me, they should need to concentrate on building quality guitars, getting a quality up. People seem to buy. The price doesn't seem to be an issue with a Gibson. People complain about the prices, but they still buy them, don't they?
Sure.
I have no idea what the Gibson numbers are like in terms of actually selling and what because Gibson is such a big company, such a diverse company selling a lot of different things. I don't know whether the guitar bit makes money on its own. I'm not sure whether it does or not, but you would have thought that's what you needed to concentrate on, and not spending money trying to sue Dean, having lost, in the European courts, the same argument, which is you're making a flying V. Yeah, but we've been doing it for a long time, and the flying V, you can't start trademarking, copywriting shapes 60 years after you started making them. You either do it when you start.
Isn't there a time frame for copyright?
Statute of limitations kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know whether there is or not. I don't necessarily think there is, but I think that and that's what that's what the court case is about. But I don't think you can argue unless you do it in the first year or two.
Because you can trademark a name, can't you? Trademarking a name is different from a Gibson body shape that might have a 50-year maximum, and then after 50 years, I'm just trying to relate this back to my industry where I sell power tools and woodworking machinery.
Yeah.
And
everybody sells the same type of thing, don't they? I mean,
the Festool rail saw was invented in Germany by Festool in 1961, and the copyright ran out about 7 years ago. Now Makita's making them. DeWalt, everybody's making these saws because the copyright ran out.
But the interesting part is they had a copyright when they started.
Sure.
They're not trying to copyright it now, are they? They're just going. I presume they're just saying as a company, well, we've had a 50-year run at it. Now other people are going to make it, and we're going to have to compete in the marketplace. You're like, it's on a completely unrelated subject, but it's a similar thing. My brother, I'm sure I've talked about this. My brother makes cricket bowling machines. In fact, I would say he makes the preeminent cricket bowling machine. All the international teams have and everything.
Pretty good because he comes to New Zealand, doesn't he?
Yeah. He comes to New Zealand and Australia and India and the Indian subcontinent, and does all this stuff on it. But the interesting part is that machine. His machine is based on a baseball pitching machine.
Yeah.
So it basically has horizontal revolving wheels. You put a ball between, fires them out. Now, the baseball machine is quite a crude machine compared to what my brother makes now. But in it, it's 3 feet off the ground. So, at the height a pitcher pitches, whatever. And it's just on legs, and you just put the ball in and it throws it at you. Whereas my brother's you vary speed, you can vary the length, you can also and it has the latest one has a sort of LCD picture of a man running up to bowl. So you see him run up and you see his arm come over, and as his arm reaches the top, the ball comes out of the hole. Anyway, sorry, diversion. But the point about it is, I've talked to my brother years ago. I mean, he's been doing it for, get 35 years or something. And said to him, copyright, stuff like that. He said, it's not worth it. Just isn't worth it. He said, we've taken that idea from the baseball pitching machine, we've transferred it on, made it into cricket machine, everything. He said, but the basic thing. He said, but they're not suing us. We're not copyrighting what we've done because it's quite a lot of money. He said, at the end of the day, other people are going to do something similar, and you can spend your entire life in a court arguing about something, or you can say, you know what?
Ours is the best.
I'm going to get on with building the best cricket machine I can. I'm going to get on developing it. I'm going to get on with, and the market will decide how it works.
Sure.
And I think, obviously, my brother's a much smaller organisation than Gibson, but sorry, early morning. But I think it's it's still opposite, and it still pertains to what Gibson are doing. That they've got a name. They've got a reputation, whatever that means, and they've got a legacy that actually their focus should be on getting that legacy in a positive light as possible up front with the consumer, so the consumer's got a choice. When they go into a shop, Gibson is the name that's on their lips. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, there were only two guitars. There were a Fender or a Gibson.
Absolutely. When I was a boy, mate. Yeah. It was either Les Paul
you aspired, didn't you? Yeah.
Yep.
You aspired to one side or the other.
Yep.
And
for a long time, I was, I loved Neil Young and I loved Jimmy Page, so it was always a Les Paul for me, for the first 10, 15 years of my life.
Well, indeed, and to be honest, continues to be. For me, Fender and Gibson tend to be aspirational instruments. Instruments you work your way up to, given your wallet size, your budgets and things like that. And and still today, for me, I'm not a current consumer, but I'm not 20. But I still think that that whilst there are lots of other guitars out there, that people aspire to those guitars, don't they? There's nothing like having a Gibson. There's nothing like having a Les Paul. You can have any other Les Paul shaped guitar you like, whatever, but actually, there's nothing like having a Les Paul. And and all the people we watch and see, talk about having a Les Paul. I've got a so and so, but I'd really like a Les Paul. Guitar hack. Spends his life going, a tobacco burst Les Paul, be your thing, whatever.
But I was on a show with him earlier on, and he said the same thing to me. He said to me that he can understand. He said I can understand why guys would buy Epiphone Les Pauls, but for him personally, the Les Paul is about the headstock just as much as the body.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I know that. That's why. That's why I never bought a Epiphone Les Paul in the first place. But I've got Epiphones, which might sound like a contradiction, but they Epiphone guitars, if you understand.
Completely, and they're great guitars. Nobody's arguing about, and I think that today you can buy, the market is better, much better, than it. I've said it on here before. The first guitar I had, electric guitar, was this hideous plywood thing called a Jedson that was frankly better off playing cricket with than you were ever trying to get a song out.
And it turned out to be good firewood.
Tremendous firewood, yes, tremendous demolition tool. But as a guitar, it was bloody awful, and it was, you couldn't, I didn't know anything about intonation and so it was never in tune. You could never tune it, you tune it and it would be out of tune. It was complete junk, and it cost, I don't know, maybe it cost £50 or £60 or something like that. But now for the same money, equivalent, for £200, you could buy yourself a decent guitar. You could buy yourself a decent Squire Bullet or a, but you could go out and gig with quite comfortably.
We've got Sonia with us.
Sonia, good morning. How are you?
It's been a long time since we've had Sonia in the chat.
So, I think that going back to my original point, that Gibson need to concentrate on building their own good, stop messing about with the litigious side, which they don't seem to make any success of at all. I don't think it's...
Can I just ask you a quick question, Simon? So I know a lot of guitar guys have come out on their channels talking about the Gibson saga. Have any guitar players, any famous guitar players or artists who have been endorsed or played Gibsons over the years, have they come out and said anything that you've picked up on?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think anybody's come out. Anybody, previous endorsees or current ones. I don't think anybody's come out and said anything about it, which I think is is interesting. But I think
Jimmy Page hasn't come out and said,
Gibson, what are you doing? No, he's too busy. He's too busy flogging his Fender Telecaster.
That's right. Yeah, he's crossed. That's right. He crossed the I was going to say party line, but yeah.
Well,
and he's got a 26-year-old girlfriend too. So
has he? Well done, Jimmy. Well done. What first attracted you to millionaire Jimmy Page? Yes. I don't know if that joke means anything to you. There used to be sadly she died, but called Caroline Ahern. She's called Caroline Ahern, and she had this kind of character called, what was she called, Mrs. She basically played Mrs. Merton, and she dressed up as an old woman, yeah, and she used to do this kind of joke chat show. And one of her most famous questions was, we used to have in the 80s, there used to be a magician who was on the TV all the time, who was called Paul Daniels. And he married a dancer called Debbie McGee. And her question was, what first attracted you to millionaire Paul Daniels?
yeah, we know Paul Daniels. He's famous.
Oh, well, he's his wife. So that was her question, which is kind of famous, kind of brilliant, comic chat show question. Immense cheek, which you can only ask if you're in a character. But yeah. So good for Mr. Page.
I just before we kick off and have a bit of a chat, about Clapton.
So there was one or two more things about the Gibson, I think, because we talked offline about whether Mark Agnesi, what his role in this is, and what he's been doing. And I think it's, for me, I've said to you, I work in the civil service in the UK, so I work in a large organisation, and some of that is about fronting to your teams policy. This takes external, but policies that come down from the boards and on high. What the strategic direction of the organisation or whatever they're doing.
Yep.
And your job as a middle manager is to kind of front those things up. And I think that Mark, as the sort of online media guy doing that, his job in that situation is to front up with that message, that they want to give out. It's been scripted for him,
Sure.
and he's made a video, but because that's his job, is to make videos, to do, and he could quite easily think, this is the rubbishest idea I've ever seen. But when you work in an organisation, it's about, you're going to stay there. You've always got a choice, about whether you stay there or not. You've got a choice about, you're going to go, okay, I'm going to do it because that's my job. We've got
to be clear there, Simon. Yeah, it's not rock and roll. It's a company. It's a corporate. It's not a rock and roll thing.
Sadly, not. No.
Yeah. Yes. I agree.
That kind of rebel image to rock and roll. You're right. It's a corporation. It has many different. It's a very diverse organisation. Don't only sell guitars and things. And I don't attach any blame to Mark, and I don't think that I don't think if you sat in, if you said to him, do you think this is a good idea? I swear he'd be going, this is a terrible idea, But, at some point in those organisations, if you're in those big organisations, you'll do something, then you have to front it up, you have to do that. Even if you think privately, this is idiotic. You have to divide your professional life off from your, and it's, so I think it's just unfortunate, really, that he's fronted it up. I think those sorts of messages should actually come from the CEO, because they're corporate, they're corporate legal things that are not part of the selling of Gibson. I think Mark is about selling Gibson as a brand.
That's a good point. That's a very good point, because I always enjoyed his guitar playing, and he did a couple of videos, didn't he, for Norm's Rare Guitars?
He did them every day, didn't he? Guitar of the day.
Yeah,
brilliant at it. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, very good. Very, very knowledgeable. Comes across as a rock and roll kind of guy. I always had, likability, which is crucial.
Crucial. He's got obviously quite a sharp character. He's got a bit of character about him, a bit of backbone, and and that's fine if you're the shop manager or the manager. You've got to be able to, you've got to have it in your army to, marshal the troops and get them working and get them organised, and and I think he did a pretty good job in North of that. He couldn't be there for 10 years or whatever he was at North and not be, So I think that, that's what they hired him for. I think Gibson, and that's what he should concentrate on. And I think for him to be dragged into this kind of corporate legal nonsense is, that's not what he's there for. I don't think that's what they decided. He would be there for, and I don't think that's what he should. He should be doing it. He shouldn't be doing it really. But because he's the online corporate person, you go right. I want you to make this video that says this. We're going to come after you if you're doing. But and you kind of read it through and you go, blimey, all right, that's what you want to say,
So what's your crystal ball telling you? What's going to happen,
well,
Simon?
My crystal ball is saying to me that with their with their brilliant win-loss ratio of lost them all and won none, that I don't see Gibson winning any of these lawsuits, to be honest. I think it's, as I said to you, closing the stable door after the horse has bolted. You cannot sue Dean for a flying V shape if they've been making it for 40 years. That's not news anymore. They just lost to Warwick Framers for the same argument in Europe. Saying, well, you can't start. You started in 958. If you copyright it in 958, you've got some chance of protection. Frankly, if you comment in 2012 when they started off attacking Framers about it, it's it's a different kettle of fish. Completely. I just don't. So I don't see them winning. I don't see them getting any. They haven't. Have you seen any positive publicity about this stuff at all? I've not. Everybody I've seen is going, "What are you doing?" At best, and at worst, they're gonna. Maybe they can afford to, but I don't know how much of an effect. It'd be very interesting to see the sales figures, to see whether this has had any effect on their sales, because I think that's the real story. Is that if they see a spike down in their sales, that's where it hurts them. But I think I don't think they'll win. I honestly don't think they'll win, because I think they're too late, and I think that they're going to have to go a long way publicity-wise to rebuild, the trust of people, and to I mean, J.C. Curley, I don't quite understand. I know that these litigations have been going on before he arrived.
Sure.
And he's the CEO. So, but I presume, it'd be the other thing is, what do the internal machinations of Gibson that mean that? I presume somebody, the board or somebody, they've had a board meeting about these things and they've decided to carry on with them.
Yeah, sure. Look, I've never been at board level politics in my life, but I've seen a few movies, watched a few TV programs, chatted to a few guys, Simon, who have been at that level over the years, and a CEO certainly directs it, but the board. The board's the power, and also let's not forget the company, the law firm behind Gibson pushing this too, because obviously there must be a lot of money invested in the law firms pushing this litigation.
There's only one set of people who win out of litigation, and that's lawyers, isn't it? This we know as a true fact. But so I don't think that even that it must have been you would think to yourself, I do, that this is a board decision. I don't think JC on his own is making that decision. I think
so. The best scenario is JC coming out saying, "Look, we've cocked up, guys. We're not pushing forward litigation. We're just going to make guitars, rock and roll."
I think, to me, that's we're going to concentrate on making the best guitars we can. They made some adjustments to their pricing structures, which I think is good. Making certain models a bit cheaper and stuff, which I think is good. Make them a bit more competitive. I think that they need to concentrate on the quality control, because I don't think it's there. It's probably getting a bit better, but still not there. It still needs work. And I kind of, to go off at a tangent and start dealing with. But as I say, it may not be his decision either. If the board decides that they're going to continue with these litigations against, and if they're not. If the board are not rock and roll guys, and they're business guys and stuff like that, they come from other areas. it's very difficult to know. I don't know what the Gibson board background is.
I've got no idea.
No, I mean, but they could easily not be guitar people, rock and roll people at all. They could easily be senior business guys, worked in other areas, or come from other parts of the organisation that Gibson has bought in the past, to diversify, and therefore you've got people who kind of live in a different world. And if you live in a different world, maybe this is, if you were, as like you were saying about the tools business, if they come from a tools or appliance background, whatever, these things might be more common, But I mean, I thought of it the other day, a kind of analogy with cars. Car manufacturers don't sue each other for the shape of their cars, even though all mid-priced family hatchbacks look the blooming same. Pretty much.
Ford's suing all the car manufacturers in the world.
Yeah, precisely, which they're not doing, of course. But they're not suing Vauxhall, they're not suing Mazda, and these are British names. But General Motors, they're not suing other companies because the shape of the cars is very different to, because they're very similar to the cars they make. Stuff like that. And they're just getting on with making the best cars they can make.
Yeah.
So sorry, I've gone a long time at this, but I do think that that for me is the interesting point. Is who's deciding? Probably the board, not just JC. Mark Ignacy is fronting up the online bit of it. He's not doing the written press or anything like that. He's just not, and probably against his better judgment. I think he knows the guitar market pretty well. If you worked in Norman Dre guitars, you know what's going on, don't you? You have a finger on the pulse.
All the big guns around the world are buying guitars from Norm.
And and I think in that world, that's an interesting parallel, really, isn't it? In that world of Norman Dre guitars, authenticity is everything.
Yes.
Provenance and authenticity. Is this really, and his reputation, if he sold a guitar as a 1958 Les Paul and it wasn't, he would get, his reputation would be in cinders, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
So in that world, you think how careful Mark, that team has to be. They get a guitar in, what's its provenance? Is it really a Gibson Les Paul? Is it really made in 1959, 1960? When is it made? What's its provenance? Is it really what it's said to be? Has anything happened to it in the previous, 60 years, up until now? Has anything been changed on it? Has anything altered? Because you've got to sell it as what it is, And if you're trying to sell a guitar, and you notice in all those Norman's Red Guitars videos that he did, often he'd be going, yeah, this is the tuners have been changed, and they put on new ones because the old ones are crumbled away.
Yep.
Still got the old ones in the box, or whatever. So he understands implicitly that provenance, that history, and that authenticity. And I think this ties into what Gibson are doing, are really the key things to selling vintage guitars. And if you don't, then you're in trouble, because that's what your reputation is. And I think that whatever you pay, one of the things you pay, and I've seen complaints about Norms, is really expensive. But actually, if you're going to buy a vintage guitar, what you want is authentic. And do you know what? If I was buying a vintage guitar, that means I've got lots of money to spend. I'd be straight round to Norm's because I know that what I'm getting is it's the thing I'm buying.
Absolutely, Simon. When I went live here in New Zealand, the first place I'm going to is Norm's Guitars.
Because that if you bought a 58 Les Paul, you might have to pay $20,000 more for it. But you know what?
It's a 58 or a 59.
You actually guarantee, it's almost cast iron guarantee.
How do you know that? Because I bought it from Norm's.
Yeah. Anybody ever bought a guitar from Norm's Red Guitars that wasn't as advertised? No. Do people complain about?
If it happened, Simon, we would all know about it. We would be doing shows about it.
Precisely. Completely. And and Mark's worked there for 10 years. He understands that authenticity thing. the thing that you must, be selling what you say you're going to sell,
Sure.
and that plays into, the Gibson authentic thing, which is fine, but, that thing about, that tangent about going off and dealing, with Dean just seems to me a waste of time, really. You've got to concentrate on making your brand as authentic as possible, making sure that people know, that when you're buying Gibson, you're buying a proper Gibson. It is a Gibson, and you're buying a Gibson. And I'm all for not, allowing, that's rip-off, buying something that looks like a Gibson, says Gibson on the headstock, and isn't, fine. Completely with that.
I'll totally, Simon. So yeah, absolutely.
No
Yeah,
issue with that.
that's why a lot of guys on Facebook groups or whatever, will ask, is this a real Stratocaster? Is this a real EVH? Because a guy's selling it,
See?
and
It's
I'm
cheap or
a
whatever.
member of a lot of these groups, and guys will say, no, it's not. It's not.
Yeah. And I always say, and which goes back to my original point. You buy a guitar from Norman as a guitar. Its authenticity is, which is why, let's not we forget, when Joe Bonamassa wanted a Flying V, where did he go?
Sure.
He went to Norman's Rare Guitars. Why? Because he could guarantee, even he could guarantee the authenticity of that guitar, because Norman had it in his store for 30 years, sitting on it. You're guaranteed that is a real guitar. And he hasn't got any worries about it not it being a fake.
Could you imagine spending a couple of days just going through that store and the back there where Mark was filming a lot of those guitars of the day, and see all those guitars sitting there, and oh my gosh.
Well, the place to go would be Norm's secret stash, wasn't it, of guitars he's had over the years. See what he's got in there.
Oh my gosh.
Can bring out from time to time. So I'm sorry, it's a very long-winded answer, but it doesn't matter. But that thing about that's where Mark comes from. That's what he understands about the authenticity, about the brand, and about the Norman's Rare Guitar has a Gibson, and what I don't think has anything to do with him is the kind of litigation with Dean, which he probably didn't even realise. He might realise what's going on, but didn't realise that he was going to have to front up stuff that wasn't about Gibson is doing great guitars, which is all the first videos that he did, isn't it? Here's the 2019 Gibson range. This is what we always calling it now, whatever is the traditional. It's we're not going to alter this guitar. This is going to be the one. If you want to buy, this proper straight Les Paul, blah blah blah, this is what you're going to get, and you're going to get it this year and next year, and we're going to have maybe some more modern stuff that has innovations on it and stuff. And I think that's completely sensible. I think what they did in restructuring it, reorganizing it, completely fine. And I think Mark could be very comfortable with that. And that's what what he thinks he's been brought in to rebuild and sell, and not this kind of litigation nonsense, which I think is a red herring. And I think as we've said, Gibson don't seem to be that. You'd think you'd learn, wouldn't you? If you weren't that successful in it, if you were kind of losing stuff, and they've tried this before, not worked, you've got all these, and you go, what are you doing it for? If you're just losing, why do you keep doing it? And my answer is I've no idea. But I'd be stopping and trying to concentrate on my own business, really.
When you look at Gibson over the years, isn't it interesting? When you look at, obviously, Gibson's an American company, and then you look at rock and roll and the birth of the Guitar Hero, and you look at the guys that were playing Gibson guitars, but who were they? Generally speaking, they're all English guys: Jimmy Page, Clapton, Tony Iommi, the guitarist from Free, what's his name?
Paul Kossoff.
All English guys. They loved Gibsons, didn't they?
Yeah. Do you know what? It just made me think, because when you said that, I was thinking to myself, I was thinking, in 1958, who played Gibsons? I sort of rack my brain about, what rock and roll stars, we're talking the late 50s, what rock and roll stars played Les Pauls?
No one.
I can't think of any. Can you?
No.
Oddly, I think of the Les Paul as being a late 60s guitar, mid to late 60s, yeah, seemingly, you know, and obviously Clapton, you know, in Cream, you know, and you know, and not in Cream, in the John Mayall's Blues Breakers, you know, having, you know, and then everybody was doing it, and you know,
Sure.
in the mid 60s, and I think of the Les Paul as a mid 60s guitar, and it's really interesting. I can't think of a single person who's playing Les Pauls
Well,
in
what's
1958. You know, Eddie Cochran and people like that. They didn't.
As he talks about that they were out of favour. They weren't popular.
Which why they stopped.
Apparently guitar shops had them lying in the back.
Yeah, because well, that's really interesting because they weren't seen as rock and roll guitars in some way, which is a really weird thing, isn't it? It's
wow.
I know, yeah, but you're absolutely right. I cannot think of a single person seeing a single picture of somebody in 1958, so a contemporary of, you know, Buddy Holly, Eddie Cochran, whoever, you know, playing a Les Paul. They all, you know, played semi-acoustics, didn't they? Gretches and various things, maybe some, you know, semi-acoustic Gibsons, but not a Les Paul. Old Fenders, of course. Fenders, you know, Telecaster and the Strat, you know, Buddy Holly, lots of people playing those, you know, rock and roll guitars, very much rock and roll, rockabilly type guitars. Those, you know,
Pete Townsend too. He was playing Gibson. So these English guys,
they kind of bought them back, didn't they? Yeah,
were the ones that were plugging them into their Marshalls, into their and just cranking them up, and yeah,
no, completely, yeah.
So maybe these English guys should send bills to Gibson and say, look, you know, if it wasn't for all the work that we did over the years.
Yeah, you weren't paying attention. Yeah, well, I think there's and that is artist endorsement, isn't it?
Sure.
You know, because there is that thing, I've read that, you know, that when Clapton went on tour with John Mayall's Blues Breakers around the country, the week after he appeared in your town, every single guitar player was off down local shop to buy a Les Paul and a 50-watt Marshall.
Peter Green. Peter Green. Perfect example. You saw him play Les Paul. I got to get Les Paul.
Got to get Les Paul. You know, and I think that, you know, that's, you know, for me, that's, you know, yeah, God, yeah. It's really interesting, that, isn't it? Yeah, they cannot think of a single rock and roll artist of any distinction who's playing Les Pauls in 1958.
Chuck Berry was playing Gibson.
No, it was 335. All those blues guys played 335s, didn't they? Maybe there is an odd blues guy who did it, but you know, but I can't think of anybody, as you say, until you get into the British guys in the 60s. I'm sure there was probably some Americans playing them by the mid 60s as well. But I can't see America's 60s pop music kind of thing. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You can't. That's it's weird, isn't it? Really weird. Kind of like, you know, nothing, and then in the mid 60s it comes up, you know, and then they sort of took off again.
Who's that guitarist that inspired Keith Richards really early on? Not Muddy Waters, not Chuck Berry. Reed. Jimmy Reed.
Jimmy Reed, yeah.
So Jimmy Reed, he never even played a Gibson. He was playing some bizarre kind of weird guitar that was similar to a Gibson Les Paul, had lipstick pickups on it. It was just this, yeah. So they weren't even playing, you know, notable American instruments.
And that's odd, isn't it?
Yes.
You know that even they weren't, and certainly not Gibsons. I don't know if you've seen this.
Gibsons then, country guys.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I mean, the classic thing is the what were there? Like only 600 Les Pauls, 600, 700, less than 1,000 Les Pauls made between 58 and 60. I think that's right. I think it's like there's, you know, a few hundred, not millions of them. I don't think. I
saw a documentary recently where they were saying the figure of 2,000 guitars in '58 or something. Well, I forget. Jeepers, I should have made a note. But anyway, the guy was talking about the statistic of how many guitars. Oh, but there's 2,000 unaccountable. 2,000 guitars in 1958.
Are they 2,000 unaccountable? Yeah, maybe they're doing
That
more
are
than that.
unaccountable, that are locked away somewhere, or damaged, burnt.
I just want to, just on the Gibson thing, I was going to show you something. I don't know if you've seen this. This is really interesting. I'm going to show you a picture of a guitar now. Right. Can you see that? What does that look like to you?
Oh, well, Les Paul.
Yes, really. Right. Sadly, this is from 1941. It's something called O.W. Appleton. Was a guy who made guitars. Right. That's a solid-bodied, single cutaway guitar. Yeah. And he made this in the 40s, and he took it to Gibson, right? And they said, "Nah, I can't imagine anybody playing a solid-bodied guitar." And then, 7 or 8 years later, Stone Me, they're making a single-bodied single cutaway guitar. I wonder.
Even Les Paul's prototype Les Paul had pickups on an angle too, didn't they?
They did, and also look at the tailpiece.
Yeah.
Again, 1950, the early 50s, they had that tailpiece, didn't they?
Yes.
The gold tops had that.
Gold
P90s
came out.
and the gold. Yeah, P90s and that gold. So, another reason why I think that if you start saying to Gibson the headstocks, well, you see even the headstock's got. Can you see that?
Yep.
Across a bit, because he's got that sort of bookendy sort of thing. So of course, you never copied that, did you, Mr. Gibson?
No.
And that's for me why they should be sending letters to the lawyers saying thank you very much, but no, because I saw Brad the guitarist talking about it, so he brought it up, which is fair play, and he was saying that in the 19th century lots of mandolins and had bookend headstocks. It's like, copyright. Gibson didn't invent any of this stuff. They probably invent. I think they were the first people to make a flying V. Fair enough, but all the Gibson Les Paul stuff. I'm a layman, but in my view, if you turn up and go, well, Gibson saw this in 1948 or something, and you go, to the layman, that's quite a lot like a Les Paul, isn't it? So that's a solid mahogany body.
They're all Gibson, all Gibson inspired. Well, Gibson original designs, but looking at that, Simon, jeepers, that's a Les Paul.
It is, it's close enough, for it's close enough for an argument, isn't it? By anybody's stretch of the organisation. He did, yes, Sonia. He did, but do a good job of it. So, which is why I'm giving him a shout out. As I just pay attention to a lot of things, and store them in my little brain rather than know everything. But as I say, to the layman, that O.W. Appleton guitar, you'd be saying, if I produced that in court, if I was a jury member, I'd be going, well, it's pretty similar, isn't it? Solid mahogany body, single at an angle. Hasn't got two pickups, got one, but cut away on the bottom and not on the top. Oh yeah, bookend headstock. Gibson, do you have a question to answer here about where you actually got that design from? And so I think for me the baseline of that is that actually suing anybody else for body shapes and stuff like that, you're on a loser, because somebody's in the history of stringed instrument making, what we're talking, 500-600 years, maybe more, or more than that probably, that somebody will have done it before you, won't they?
Well, didn't they take Paul Reed Smith to court as well?
Oh, you see, they lost that. They lost the PRS.
They lost that.
Yeah. They lost. Lots of things. Hence my point. Yes, well done, Gibson. You've lost a load of. You tried it with PRS, that didn't work. You tried it with
And the PRSs don't look anything like a Les Paul.
No, but they tried to do it on this single cutaway business, didn't they?
Yeah.
But see, to me, I'll go back to the Appleton, like they invented it, you know. And of course, you know, Telecaster has a single cutaway. You know, I know it's not the same, but you know, even a Telecaster, how far? You know, it's got different headstock and stuff, and I think that, you know, it's still a single cutaway solid body guitar. How far do you take this argument? You know, I don't think anyone would mistake a Telecaster for a Les Paul by a long shot, but you know, in its general description, you know, it'd be, you know, you have to go down a bit before you actually make a distinction between the two, don't you?
Well, Sonia's saying Gibson lost a lot of respect, and you know she's
Completely.
a guitar nut, so she's probably speaking from her own, you know, from a personal perspective too. But yeah, a lot of people online are losing respect. But how do you balance it out if you're a Gibson fan or a guitar fan? How do you balance your love of Gibson guitars, Simon, and knowing that you know this guitar or this brand that's been close to you for a long time, and just doing idiotic things, becoming a laughing stock in the music supply musical instrument industry?
I think, well, for me, you divorce the two things. Yeah, there's Gibson, the instrument maker, that makes iconic rock and roll guitars. You know, and you know there'll always be a thing to aspire to. In my books, you know, as an instrument and as a thing. And then I think, you know, there's the Gibson Corporation, I think, which needs to take a long, hard look at itself, look at its past mistakes. You know, I was just looking at the PRS thing, you know, when initially PRS in 2001, they lost the case, but then they went to appeal and then they won. You know, in fact, this makes me laugh. How you can, in the litigation, Gibson alleged that concert goers in a smoky concert hall might not be able to differentiate a PRS single cut from a Gibson Les Paul.
Really?
Let's be fair, you know. And
really,
the appellate court rejected that trademark theory out of hand, emphasising Gibson's concession in court arguments that only an idiot would confuse the two products at the point of sale.
Or someone right. Drugged out of their brains.
Yeah, well, yes, you know, it's like you go into a shop, you are not going to. Nobody. I can't imagine. Do you know, I went into this shop when by accident I bought a PRS as opposed to Les Paul because I mean, you know what I mean? Because
I want my money back. Because this is not a Gibson.
You know, Gibson PRS. I mean, they're nearly the same word, aren't they? Not. You know, it's I just, you know, it's on those grades. You go, you know what? Just stop paying the lawyers for that sort of, you know, in a smoky concert hall. You might mistake them. No, you wouldn't.
I've watched a few shows over the last month or so when the story broke, and you know, and you pick up a few comments from, you know, guitar guys like ourselves, and yeah, there's no support, and yeah, I think we're just echoing what a lot of other cats out there are saying, Simon. You know, they need to come out and just say, look, sorry,
sort your lives out, you know, get a grip. I think, you know, Sonia says, I believe that Gibson USA may be trying to improve their QC. Yeah, absolutely. On at least the USA made stuff. I think that's true, Sonia. They are trying to do that, you know. And there was a sort of thing where I think, what did they do the first thing they did was put in better lighting into the factory. Because I don't think the lighting in the factory was that good, you know, and you missing stuff from, you know, could easily be something as simple as that. But I think, you know, people have got to be, and this is a bit tangential, but it plays it. You know, what if Gibson want better QC, then the workforce need to buy it, don't they? You know, the guys on the ground who are making those guitars, you know, out there sanding, they need to be looking at those guitars critically and going, yeah, that's good. I'm proud of that. That's going out, you know, with, you know, not with my name on it, but with my name on it. You know, and then, you know what, that one's not going out because it's not good enough. It's a B stock. There's something happened in the one part of the process. You either go back and redo it, or sell it as B stock. I don't know. Do you think that's an interesting question? Do you think that Gibson having a B stock line, like this has got flaws in it, right? Would that put you off buying Gibson? Do you think Gibson's reputation would be lessened by having, if you like, lots of companies do that, don't they? They sell stuff cheaper with flaws in it, minor flaws. This has got a bit of a scratch in it or something. You can have it for 200 quid off, kind of thing.
If I was going to buy a Gibson or a Fender or something like that, Simon, personally, I would want it to be A stock. If I wanted to buy a good cheap guitar, I would go and buy a middle of the road guitar and do it up. But if I was going to hang a guitar up on my wall, and it's like a Gibson.
Yeah.
I would want it to be A stock. And that's my personal opinion.
No, I think that's fine. I get that, and I think that you're absolutely right about it. But my question was, do you think that having a B stock line would harm Gibson's reputation?
Well, they've always had it, haven't they?
Have they? Do they do? You can buy B stock ones, can you?
Well, I've seen guitars here in New Zealand. Like a guy was selling on trade B stock Hummingbird, and he still wanted $3,500 for it. A Gibson Hummingbird.
Yeah.
A lot of money for a B stock.
So that's a private person selling it, yeah. But he bought it as a B stock one, not an A.
No, apparently it's got it has a mark on it or something. It's identified by Gibson as B stock.
Oh, okay, right, fine, yeah. It's not something I've come across at all. They obviously do it quiet.
That's the only case that I know.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen pictures, and I've seen pictures of Guitar Center. If they get a Gibson that's flawed, then they smash it.
Yeah,
I've seen pictures. I presume that's true. That's what people have said. And you think to yourself, you've just smashed a perfectly good guitar because of some, and actually. Yeah, I for one, I'm slightly the opposite. I for one, if I saw a Gibson for a $2,500 Gibson and it was like 1,500 quid or something, I could and it because it had some flaws or something that I'd consider buying it. Absolutely, I would. I'm all for the deal. So, I'm with the Tone King. I'm all for the deal. But you make a choice about what you want. But I think to myself, if it played, it's got all the Gibson stuff on it. It's an authentic Gibson. That's fine. I would consider that. Absolutely. But I don't think it would harm Gibson's reputation in the slightest, because it would show you that their quality control was working, wouldn't it? You'd be showing that you've got your A stock over here, and everybody, it's been looked at, it's been scrutinized before it goes out, and then something that hasn't has been caught and is over in the B stock line. But you can still buy it because it's still a perfectly serviceable guitar.
They have 11,000 to 15,000 guitars in one time in their warehouse.
Yeah, ready to go out.
Ready to go. That's a hell of a lot of guitars, Simon.
It is, yeah. But they're a big company, and I guess, Gibbs, they do. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? One interesting thing that interests me quite a lot is sales of guitars. People go, "Oh, they're declining," and you go, and then you look at PRS. Good example. They bring out the Silver Sky, which seems to sell like hotcakes. Right? Just selling hotcakes means they sold 500, 10,000, 4. I don't know. I have no idea. Have you any idea?
No.
Just
Google
it.
That's the marketing department too, isn't it?
Well, yes, indeed. Yeah, and they don't necessarily want to. They don't necessarily want to say.
They're top of the range guitars. They're not entry level or middle.
No, completely. Yes, absolutely, completely. Sorry, I'm just having to type Sky, which is hard work.
No problem.
It's, that's kind of John Mayer thing. Any ideas how many they've sold? You know, it's interestingly, the fourth thing down the go, how to tell a fake PRS John Mayer Silver Sky from the real thing. That's from April 2019. So, Gibson, not immune, I mean, I must say that's the other thing is, I know that Fender have tried, they've tried to copyright stuff in the past, haven't they, and failed. I don't think they've done anything recently massively on the litigation front. Are they not just getting on with making decent guitars?
And just blowing sales, out of the water every year. They're increasing.
Yeah,
they're bringing out new amps all the time.
New amps, new stuff, and new things moving forward. Taking the brand forward. I mean, the interesting is, that I get, as many people make, let's be fair, super strats,
Yep.
and all of those things, and Gibson, Fender don't seem to, they don't seem to be going, John, sir, I'm sending you a cease and desist letter because you're building what is in essence, or indeed, I've got one. I've got a Rob Chapman. I've got a Chapman guitar that is, it's got the same shape as a Fender body, got a different headstock, reverse Telecaster headstock, but, it's still the same thing. But Fender don't seem to be going about it in the same way. They seem to have gone, you know what? You can buy a Fender guitar for £100 and it'll be made by us and it'll be really good. Those
and they've revamped their custom vibe range. They've got a contemporary series, they've
classic
got
vibes and all of that stuff. Yeah.
I saw one a couple of weeks ago in my local guitar shop. They've got this custom vibe Stratocaster with a Floyd
classic vibe.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, with a Floyd. Okay, yeah.
And it's got humbuckers. It's a fantastic guitar.
Yeah. But my point about Fender is they've gone, we're going to make a guitar every price point, so that in actual fact, you can, if you want to buy a Fender, why would you buy a fake Fender for £100, £100, whatever, when you can buy a real one? You could buy an authentic, properly made by us, QC'd by us Fender guitar for £100, or you can buy one for £200, or you can buy one for £400. You can buy a classic vibe one, or you can buy one for £700. Made in Mexico. You can buy a £1,200-1,500, which is the made in America one. To me, that's the way of doing it. You go, what should I be doing? I should be making a guitar at every price point, so that I buy a Gibson because it's £150. But I'm getting the Gibson shape, Whereas I buy a Fender, and I'm going to buy a fake Fender because I can buy a real Fender.
Yeah.
I don't need to, I'm not doing that. I don't need to do it because I can buy, to me, that's Fender's smart move. And I know Gibson made those kind of
Fender, like, for example, with their bass breaker amps that came out a couple of years ago that took the world by storm. So you've got the bass breaker 7-watt. All the way up to 100 watts. So again, you've got the entry level. You can buy a good entry level amp, or if you're a gigger in a band, you can buy the top of the range. It's fantastic, great.
Well, completely. And my point exactly. That in a sense, my original point was just, why would you buy a fake Fender? Because you can buy a real one for the same money. And frankly, I'll always buy a real, Fender Squire, is still made by Fender. It still has the Fender, those things. And I feel like, that, I've had a Fender Squire. I've had a Fender Squire, £100 guitar.
I've got three of them. I've got three Fender custom vibe Simon, and they're exceptional. They came out of the box exceptionally good. Set up well, played well. Got a decent sound to them. My £100 Fender Squire was as a second guitar, it was fine. It worked fine. Sure.
And what you want is it to stay in tune, sound pretty reasonable, playable and stuff like that.
Feel good,
and this
feel
guitar,
good, and it's got to look cool.
Good. Got to look cool. It had the iconic shape, the headstock, everything else. I think there's another interesting point. Gibson and Epiphone, the headstock business, and all of that. But I think that's where Fender have cracked it and Gibson haven't. Because Fender have said, we understand what, a beginner player, and we're going to make a Fender guitar for a beginner. We're going to make a Fender guitar for an intermediate things. And as I say, in every price point, you can buy a Fender, And I'm, constantly I'm not amazed anymore, but you know, you see people. I see Rob Chapman, and he'd be, they'll get a 200 quid guitar out, and he'll go, "This is a great guitar," you know. He'd be getting on Lads Anderton's videos. And I saw him the other day. He was like playing, and he said, "Well, this is a great guitar." It's like 200 quid. What? Kind of thing. And in some ways, it is a £200 guitar, and that's fine. But nobody's lying about it, are they? Nobody won't know where the savings are. But he's saying this is still a really good guitar. If you've got this, you could go out, you could learn to play on it very nicely. It's got decent action, decent playability, good sounds, good pickups. You can go out and play with it. You can go and play in a pub, no problems at all.
Those Anderton guys are very smart. I love their videos. They've got Robert and that other young guy with the beard, and they've got the captain, and then he has regular. They're just very good. They give you all the information you need to make a decision. So obviously they've set their channel up for sales for themselves. But look at the service that they're doing for that product range here in New Zealand. I jump on their channel and do
find
research.
Out what you need. Yeah. Go down to your local guitar shop. Yeah. It makes me laugh, that kind of, whoa, you're only doing it to sell things. Well, they are a shop. What's the matter with that?
Sure.
It's not as if they're not. It's not as if they're pretending to be independent, but actually they're a shop. It says Anderton's. We have a shop, by the way. It's not a by the way. It's not a by the way. It's a completely upfront thing. And I agree. And I have a lot of time for Rob Chapman. I think that he, his thing, which is, if you don't like a Chapman, don't buy one. Buy something else. Buy a guitar. Buy a Gibson. Buy a Fender. Buy the guitar you like. It doesn't have to be mine. And he has other guitars. And oh my god.
But what's interesting though is that he regularly, Simon says on his shows, that he doesn't play guitars like this. He doesn't like these body guitars. So if he's doing a review on them, he makes it quite clear that it's not his type of guitar.
It's not his cup of tea, and why would it be? That's completely fine. I don't. But you see him buying. He bought that private stock PRS for his son, didn't he? As a kind of investment. He's bought Les Pauls, he's bought Fender Stratocasters, Telecasters, other makes of guitars, and he loves PRSs. And he's like, he's not. That's what I like about him, is that he's not bound by. Just because I make a guitar doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that the only thing I'm going to recommend to you is my guitars. Sure. I'm going to try and make the best guitars I can. So I'm just typing it into my daughter.
What's really interesting, though, too, and I think you and I said this early when you and I hooked up on our first show, you have to be a little bit clever and smart to work out what these guys are actually implying by what they're saying. You've got to listen. You've got to listen to what they're saying. They're not going to come out and say this is a great guitar, but there'll be other clues there that will alert you to them saying, well, it's not bad,
Yeah, completely, and absolutely, and he'll recommend a £200 Fender or whatever, Did you see that? Rob Chapman. He did a brilliant thing. He did a Thomann video. They had that Gear University thing a few weeks ago, where all the YouTubers went. Did you catch any much of that? Obviously not. I did. Well, he did it. He did a video a couple of days ago, which was like, which is best, a Chapman or what was the other make? There was another make, like a. I can't remember. I can find out what it is. It's annoying me now. He kind of did a Chapman versus something else, like a Charvel or something. Or it wasn't a Charvel, but yeah, he did a video which was Chapman versus another guitar, and he was really equitable about it, and he went through it properly, did the things properly, and kind of went through. This is a good guitar, this is also a really good guitar, and inevitably you make your own mind up because that's your. That's the whole point. But he didn't just go, my guitar's best. It's very good. You know, I take my hat off to him for being confident enough to go, I'll put my guitar up against another guitar, and you guys can decide what you think which is best. I think that's quite bold myself. You know,
We've got the CIA here too, Simon.
Have we? Oh no, who's dropped in? Don't tell me. It's
CIA.
Really? Is he here? Is he? Mr. Smith.
No, well, I don't know who the CIA is, but
seriously, though, have you heard the news about a secret extraterrestrial government base? No.
But that's a great channel name.
That's a great channel name, the CIA. Yes.
In England, it'll be the MI5 or MI6.
CIA are now kicking themselves that somebody else has got the channel before.
and here in New Zealand, it'll be the SIS.
Is it the SIS? Is it in where was I? Yeah. So you know, just yes. So I take my hat off to Roger myself. You know that you know whatever else, and you know, building a guitar, you know, company pretty much from scratch, and you know, I take my hat off to anybody that does that. You know, because that's hard. You know, building a company is hard. You know, having a strategy, doing things, you know, is difficult. You know, in a world populated by Fender, Gibson, PRS, you know, all those other guys, you know, Epiphones, you know, to make a brand that has become successful, you know, I take my hat off to them about that, really. You know,
yeah.
And I've got two, you know, so two Chapmans, you know, and they're you know, that £200 black guitar I've got is a great guitar. It's got really not great neck, you know. I mean, one of the interesting things about Chapman is about Google to Area 5151 takeover. Oh, well,
what I like about Chapman too is, you know, he's a gigging musician. So you know, he knows guitars, and and he's done the guitar playing community a great service. You know, those videos that he's done with Andertons, what, 10 years? Yeah. Go back 10 years, Simon?
10 years, yeah. You know, and, you know, makes some decisions about, you know, how you're going to do it and stuff like that, you know, and, you know, so I mean, and it's fine, you know, people, you know, people will hit on it and go, they're rubbish or they're whatever, you know, and stuff like that, you know, and, you know, like every guitar company, they, you know, quality control is the major issue they've got. You're making something. I had something quite interesting about when you go to the Far East. You know, you go to Indonesia or somewhere to, you know, if you want to make a guitar. The difficulty, I think this is probably a standard difficulty, is that they say you go and you say, okay, make me a sample. You know, make me some sample, make me a prototype, make me a sample. So they make the prototype, and they're all brilliant. You know, really good. You go, right, that's fantastic. Look at this. You know, boom. When they come to make them as a standard item off the production line, quite often there's not quite the quality control in the normal production that there is in the you know the production of the prototypes, or you know when they're trying to sell you their business, you know, and I think that you know that's quite a telling thing, and why I noticed Chapman's recently they moved their factory, didn't they? They moved to a different factory, you know. And I've heard of other companies, I can't remember which one, but where they'll put somebody from their company on site at those, you know, the Far East factories, you know, to kind of do their company's quality control before they leave the factory, kind of thing, you know, as an addendum along to CI. Be right back. You mean the CIA's gone away, is it? Not omnipresent. But I think, yes, you know, as I say, you know, for me, the thing about Rob is, you know, that you know, he's not just blinkered, you know, buy my stuff against anybody else's kind of thing, you know. He's much more clear-eyed about it, you know. I'm a guitar player first, you know, and I understand. You know, go and buy a Gibson. If you want a Gibson, go and buy one. You know, yes, you should. You know, or a Fender or whatever, you know.
And having watched a lot of their videos over the years, if he's really animated about a guitar, you know, that indicates to me, and I think that's the giveaway. That's when it's like really, really good. You know, when he's pulling faces and you know, and he's like Yeah. But then there's times where he's just and I won't talk about what those videos are, because it just wouldn't be good for us. But there are a few videos there where they just go through the the motion, and it's not because he's had a hangover. I'm sure it's because it's just like that's his way of saying, well,
it's
Simon,
right. Not me.
This is probably not a very good guitar.
But yeah, I mean, they're quite. You have to read it a bit. You're absolutely right. They're not going to come up and go, "This is the junkiest thing ever. And I wouldn't buy this." But quite often you'll be going, "No, you can tell,
exactly.
can't you?"
Exactly.
And I completely respect their right, not as a retailer, because that over the door is the word shop.
Sure.
Not independent. There's nothing that says in any of the things implied or anything. Independent reviewer who can say what he likes.
You're right.
They're not safe in the booth.
The captain will be saying something, and you'll see him going,
"Not for me." But his whole ethos is, never mind what I say. Go and try it. Go and see what speaks to you. What you bond with, whether it's a Chapman or a Gibson or a Fender or a PRS or a Dean or whoever. Go and bond with those. Find a guitar that speaks to you. Buy that guitar. That's the way to do it. And
you can play it
too. What's your sound? Buy the things that you like for your sound.
Sure.
And I think that if you get that message out of those things, which I clearly do, I think that's actually the best message. That's the thing. That's the message. For all of us. Is there's the great news is there's more great quality kit. Oh, morning, Jason Wade. How you doing? Hot Toe Mighty. Look at that beautiful red guitar. Oh, indeed, it's a very cool guitar. That I was saying, you've got the chance to have a really quality instrument at a reasonable price. Whoever you're buying from, it's never been better, has it, from the consumer point of view?
Yeah. And before we knock off, I'd just like to say to you, Simon, those English guys, their channel's spectacular. When they do a review, of an amp or a group of amps or a line of guitars, man, they're thorough.
Sure, they are thorough, and they do lots of things, and I think that that if nothing else, their demo, and in fact their demos, rather than I'd say demo, is quite often here's a new range of the new what they called what are the new Fender range called Ventura, but Future. Anyway, they and Pete Honoré and Lee went through them all. Here's one, here's another. And you get an idea about what they all are, what they do. What the specs are and stuff like that. I mean, what's the matter with that? All good in my books.
That Danish Pete's a very good guitarist too, isn't he?
He's a great guitar player. Yeah. And he's really good at demoing stuff, and things, and when him and Captain, when they ran through all those new Fender lines, you get an idea. What I want is an idea about what they all do.
Yes.
If I wanted to buy one, I'd go down the shop and try one out. Yeah, absolutely, to see if it, because that's the only way of dealing with it in my books. Is really you have to play something, and then see whether it speaks to you and stuff, whether it's got the sound, whether you can get the sound you want out of it. So that's a personal thing, and but if I can go somewhere and go, here's the range, here's what they do, here's some idea about what they then I think that's good for me. God, if I had that when I was 20 years old, I'd be ecstatic, as opposed to nothing. Well, there was a magazine called Beat Instrumental that did guitar reviews, and that's the first one I can remember coming across. I don't know whether even people like Guitarist magazine and stuff like that were even going then. This must be the mid-70s. I don't know if they were even going in the mid-70s, to be honest. But do you have guitar magazines? Is there like a New Zealand guitarist magazine?
No. So we get all the English ones, and obviously
okay.
Guitar World and Guitar Player. But but yeah, I used to buy them religiously, but yeah, not anymore. I think the last guitar player magazine I bought was about 2 years ago when Keith Richards released his solo album, and Keith was on the cover. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of yes. So it's a bit. I just wondered if there was a kind of New Zealand version, or whether you just got the British ones, kind of thing. Not just in there. And these days, the sort of the paper press is Jason Wade saying, "Do you remember Circus magazine?"
Yes, I remember buying Circus magazine because of the pictures and photos of Van Halen. Just buying.
Was that a New Zealand magazine? Was that an American magazine?
No, I think it was an American magazine.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I've not heard of it particularly, but I'm not paying attention.
So we've got Ed Ward saying, great infotainment. We are lucky to have the option to watch those guys. Exactly. Yeah, and that's what those
Hello, Ed.
channels are. Yeah, they're infotainment. They're funny, but full of information. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and Arvin, how you doing? Hope you're good. It's nice of you to drop in. And Ed, don't recognise Ed's name. That's Edwards. Hello, how you doing? Where are you from?
But no, that's a good point. It's infotainment. Yeah, it's entertainment, but you're getting some good hot playing and plenty of information about a guitar, amp, pedal. They don't tend to do a lot of pedals, do they? It's mainly guitars and amps.
It's mainly guitars and amps and stuff like that, and I think that's fine. It's they'll do maybe a whole of the Fender range and stuff like that. But no, I think that's completely fine.
And that young guy Reba,
stick with what you do.
And
Rabea.
that other guy, when they do the sounds like by busting the bank or not busting the bank, they're very good. They're pretty clever guys.
The guy Matt, he's the managing director.
Yeah.
He's the managing director of Chapman Guitars.
Oh, really?
He's the guy who runs Chapman Guitars with Rob. Yeah.
Oh.
Obviously, Lee's in it as a kind of. I think he's a bit more of a silent partner. Really, he's a guy. I think he did some funding and stuff like that. But obviously, he's got Andertons to run, and that's a full-time job.
Sure.
But Matt is the guy who mainly runs Chapman Guitars with Rob. And I think they've got a small team. I think they've got like an office and stuff with, maybe 3 or 4 people working for them.
So Ed's from Colorado, Simon.
Colorado. God, what time is it in Colorado? It's 3 o'clock in the morning or something. Actually, no, it's 8 hours behind, isn't it? So 10 to 12, not too bad. Yeah, welcome, Ed. Thanks for dropping by. So very cool. Yeah, I like the Matt and Rabea's Sound Like series. They're fun.
Yeah.
And it's always, let's face it, it's always good to go, that's not what it sounds like at all. I think they do a great job, and I think to
be fair, I think they nailed it. I think they get pretty close.
Yeah. And let's face it, it's fun, isn't it? If you want to do whoever, and you want to have a go at sounding like that particular band because they're your favourite, what better place to start than those guys? If they've done a video on it, it's like, to me that's great. And doing them on a budget as well, I think is really cool. I know they do by busting the bank and getting the most expensive kit they can, which sounds like lots of fun. But I think that having having budgets and stuff is a really good idea as well. I'm all for these things. It's all good. It's I see nothing to criticise in these. My criticism would be reserved for things that are not what they seem.
Yeah.
And I don't come across very much of that. Not in our community. Everybody's very straight up and down. Very honest and very. Even Chapman, I think, is. And Andertons. They're very honest about what they do. What they're going to do and what they're not going to do. They're not going to put something up and just to shoot at it and say this is the worst thing I've ever heard. And neither would I expect them to. Leave that to the independent reviewers. I'm someone like Shane from In the Blues. Who I think is great.
Yeah.
Mr. Independent says what he thinks. If you want to know about something and he's reviewed it, you'll get his honest opinion. It's only his. Remember, it's only his opinion, not yours. But you get an honest opinion, and I think that's fine, and that's as valid. But I think the Anderton thing is as valid as his thing. Because it's up front. You know what you're getting, don't you? You know what's going on. As I said several times. Shop name over the door. You know what you're going to get. And your expectation is, for me, my expectation is set by that.
How long have Anderton's been around for? Was that Lee's parents' company?
64. I think his dad and his uncle started it.
Oh, okay.
About 64, something like that. Yeah.
In Guildford.
In Guildford, yeah. And obviously, what Lee's done is obviously, started taking it on, and he's taken it from being just the shop in Guildford, the local shop in Guildford.
Yeah.
He's turned it into an internet company. Basically, I mean, hats off to him. It's this mini Amazon kind of thing. But it's for me that's
so
interesting.
What's the population of Guildford, Simon?
Oh, I don't know, 50,000, 60,000.
So it's only a small place.
Yeah, it's not huge. It's a town. It's not a city. I think.
Oh, okay.
So we have a look. But so yeah. But what he's done is take and I think they have. They've obviously got the shop, and then they've got that vast warehouse place.
Yes.
And which they run the internet.
They ship all over Europe.
Ship all over. Oh, and 147,000 people in Guildford. So I'm underselling Guildford, but nevertheless, it's it's not a very big town, and if you were, if you're having a music shop that only serviced 147,000, 150,000 people, that would be quite difficult. So when I think his brilliance has been to recognise 10 years ago the growth of the internet, start doing the stuff with Rob Chapman, and then growing that business, understanding that, shipping things, selling things, and demoing them all lines up, and I think that's probably, I know that in the early days there wasn't so much of a correlation, but I think there's much more of a correlation there. Did you watch did you watch Phil McKnight on Friday?
No.
Well, one of the interesting things he said that apparently other people have done it too, so I think it's not only him. But he reviewed the Harley Benton 212 cab, the one that's like really cheap, and apparently they sold out on the back of this to have a 6-week. He said you could tell that he did a demo for it, and there was this big spike in Thoman's, in their sales. They sold out because of it, which is kind of the first time I ever, and I've come across it on a lower level with Ben, even Ben Coombs, 2 or 3 people buy a Lawrence Petros pedal on the back of Ben having Lawrence Petros on it. But yeah, that's a different scale to apparently it's sold out and it's now on back order. It proves, the power of the internet, the power of, YouTube reviews and stuff.
Phil knows what he's talking about too.
I love Phil.
Exceptional.
Yeah, and and I think that again, Phil's does very honest reviews. He's independent, or he has that whole system where you can tell up front whether he's being sponsored for the video, whether it's he's being given free kit, whether always makes it plain what's going on, and I think that's that to me that's all you want, isn't it? You want to know.
Yep.
Were you given this? Did you buy it? And Phil buys a load of gear, and and therefore you can make a judgment then about, if he's got it on his channel and he's been given it, it means that it's going to be all right, Might have some bits, things to talk about, but in general, he's not going to review something to go, this is terrible, is he? And I think anybody worth a salt, you would go back to the company and say privately and say, this is not for me. I don't like it at all. I don't think this is very good. If they've got any sense, they'll go, what don't you like about it? And kind of, take that as kind of customer feedback. If I was a company, I would send out a lot of things to people like Phil, because not necessarily for a review on YouTube, but to find out what he thinks about it. You know?
Yeah, I wouldn't like to go live or on my channel and say something's a hunk of junk. I'd say something like, it's okay. But if something was exceptional, I would say, I would clearly say, gosh, this is the best guitar I've played, Simon, in 3 years. Exceptional, the value for money. Get one. But you don't want to come across as being negative, because someone's going to invariably say, well, I've got that guitar
and it's great.
Did the hunk of junk, and I gig with it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And so I mean, I agree, and I think that that going on and saying stuff is rubbish is quite difficult and quite dangerous myself.
Yes.
And I don't think that that. I mean, I think that inevitably, at some point, and I think they all do it. That thing about the this is what I think, but make your own mind up. I think, for instance, Shane from In the Blues, I think, does a really good thing. Like, you do the whole review, the whole bit, and then only at the end does he say, "This is my opinion of it."
Yes.
So he almost do a video, and then my opinion bit is an addendum to that video. And by that he's saying, right, here I do the demo. This is what I think about it. This is what it does. And you do them. And then you'll say, what do you think?
Where he said, the neck is fantastic on this guitar. The pickups are okay. And if I bought this guitar, I'd change the pickups. I put a hotter set of pickups in.
Or whatever, and you take into account what he does. He's a blues player and stuff like that. And, I completely understand that.
And that's what he's measuring his reviews by. Let's get that quite clear. He's not going to give you a review if you're a Mettler playing in drop D, he's a blues, he's a rock and roller,
Yeah. So, he's in the area that certainly I play in much more than you're right. So, it's, and I, so, as you say, so if I'm watching a demo by Rabea and he's doing some heavy metal pedal or whatever, it's like, it's fine. I love his playing, and I think he's a fantastic guitar player. But, this isn't something that's going to be in my arsenal of things to play with, because it's not what I do, so which is fine,
but when he does a Clapton play for 15,000, 1,500 pounds or something like that, and him and Matt go and pick a Squire and in a Fender amp, and I'll watch that and go, because he's a hot guitarist. But no, you're right. I'm not going to be watching these metal channels, because it's not my genre. It's not.
No, for me, it's very interesting that I probably said this before as well. That the thing about demoing, particularly guitars, I think that, I don't know about you, but I get the most out of kind of when people play clean and they play chords. That's kind of my baseline. I get an idea about what the guitar sounds like. And the thing about, I've got this new guitar, I've got it going through a, this, that, and the other, and I've got it plugged into my, and you're going, you've got all these pedals on and stuff like that, and then you're just going to play a lot of lead lines. Myself, I don't get anything out of that, and I don't have much less of an idea about what a guitar actually sounds like in those circumstances. You know what I mean? So when somebody does something and they go, right, I'm playing this in a backing track and stuff like that, it's fine. I don't have any issues about it, obviously making it play what they're doing, and I have no issues with that. But for me, that doesn't tell me what guitar sounds like, and I have no baseline. My baseline in my own head and ears is me playing my Fender Strat through my PV Delta Blues clean, and I know what that sounds like in my head. So we all got a baseline about what we listen to something against, and we compare it. And I think that for me, that's the important bit, and that's what I like to see in a demo. Really, is just some straight major chords, and then I get an idea in my head what it sounds like against my own kit and what I've got. I've told you this funny story. But I've got that black guitar, but I put the Sir pickups in,
Sure.
When I was researching it, I went off. There was this one guy. He'd done a video, and he said in the commentary, he said, "I can't understand." He said, "A few people have asked me for this video," and he said, "I can't understand why they've asked me for it." He said, "They want me to play this Suhr." He put Suhr pickups on the guitar. He said, "They want me to play it clean, just through my clean amp, no effects, nothing." He said, "But I never play like that." He said, "I always play with some distortion and stuff like that." He said, "I can't understand why you would want it." which I think is really funny. But but that's what I want, And he couldn't get it at all. He didn't really understand that. I want to hear a clean guitar, so you hear the pickups, And when you do a G chord, I go, "Oh, right, okay, that's quite a lot like my Fender, or that's
Sure.
like something else." It's, makes me laugh. When he didn't understand it. But that's what I look for. Do you agree, Andrew, or are you looking for something else when you listen to demos like that?
Well, I normally start with a bit of distortion. For me, I like to hear some power chords.
Yeah.
That's where I start historically. That's generally. But like you do clean your amp up. You clean your Strat up, and you put a bit of reverb on, and But I like to hear something cranked first.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you're different to me. That, which that's fine. And I get the idea that if you're buying an EVH Wolfgang and stuff like that, then what you want to hear is, does it do the EVH thing? I would guess, because that's what you're buying it for.
Sure.
And I guess that kind of high gain, stuff into. So somebody who's doing it and demoing it and is going, "Well, this is what it sounds like." How close do you think it is to the real thing? I completely understand that as a as a baseline, and that's a different baseline. And I completely accept that that's that's what you're looking for, and that's useful for from your point of view, because that's the baseline you understand, isn't it? The baseline for this is a driven guitar sound through a Marshall kind of thing, or whatever. So what I'm looking at for is, does it make that sound? Kind of thing. I've got in my head about yeah.
So,
and I completely understand that as a position.
Sure, I'm just mindful of the time, Simon. For me,
right. It's a stomach rumbling.
Yeah, and I've got a dog too. Hey,
dog dinner. Yes.
So where are you? So Carl can do next Monday, and I that's New Zealand time, so I can do next Monday. So how does that
next
fit
Monday?
With your schedule?
You mean, well, not tomorrow, but next week.
Yeah.
Monday morning is fine. I'm a bit more pressed for time, obviously, because obviously it's school day for the next.
Okay. Well, because
of
Carl's work commitments. Let's at this stage, and if anybody is in the chat listening, want to earmark it. So we'll either go for this time frame next week or Monday New Zealand time, depending on
that's fine.
John Smith.
So Monday New Zealand time would be now. Okay, next week. So Monday New Zealand time would be Tuesday morning for me. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now I can't do Tuesday morning the week after. Yeah, because we're flying out to. I'll be doing it on the plane, which would be funny. Okay. But yeah. So in fact, I'll be in midair by 6 a.m. flying to Gibraltar. So I can't do, for me, Tuesday week. Next week I can't do the Tuesday because I'll be flying. Okay. I could do Monday morning. That'd be all right. Kids will be off school by then. I could also do next Sunday, the same time as we've done today as well. So
okay, all right. Well, what we'll do is we'll just have to put some pressure on Carl, because he's doing some research now on the Stones and the different guitar tones and guitars, and that's been something that he's been talking about with you and I, for a while. So he's made some connections. So I'm desperate
Excellent.
to hear them.
Yeah, and I think there's a really good conversation there to be had with, guitar tones, and then in a broader, more general context of, people developing in the 60s. just a thing. Do you know a British guitarist called Richard Thompson? Have you heard of Richard Thompson? He was in a group called Fairport Convention a long time ago.
Yes, I know the band. Yes.
For a long time, he's been a solo. Well, one of the things he said was that when he started, age 17 in 1967 or whatever, he said that he plays a Stratocaster. He's a Strat man, and a Fender man. He said that one of the reasons for that was that everybody was playing a Les Paul. Like, Eric Clapton and Cream, and we're all playing Les Pauls and Masters. He said we wanted to do something different to them. So actually, they made a choice based on not being Eric Clapton and Cream, which I think is, and that thing we were talking about Eric Clapton, went through the Gibson bit, and then he went off to Fender and started cleaning, and stuff like that. So I think there's a broader context of what people were doing in the late 60s and what sounds they were going for and stuff.
And that's one of the reasons why George Harrison continued for a while there with his Gretsch. He didn't want to play Strats because the guitarist from the Shadows was playing a Strat. And it wasn't considered cool for them to be playing Strats.
A
couple of years later, though, they sent their road guy out to go and get them a couple of Strats. But interesting.
How quickly times change. Could I just say that Hank Marvin is Cockney rhyming slang. Hank Marvin is Cockney rhyming slang for starving. I'm Hank.
We ain't starving now, is he?
I'm Hank Marvin. Means I'm starving.
Oh, I'm Hank Marvin. Me too. I'm Hank Marvin.
Yeah, you're Hank Marvin. You're starving. You're waiting for dinner. Yes.
but no, that's interesting that you should make that connection and bring that up, because that's certainly something too that the Beatles had for a long time. George, and I remember Carl making fun to me about George Harrison playing a Gretsch. Why would anyone play when he could have been playing anything else? And but he that was a decision, and he liked that trebly sound too. They needed that trebly sound.
Well, because it's different to what John was playing, and it cuts, doesn't it? As a sort of more lead guitar, you want something that cuts, don't you? Cuts through.
And Paul was playing that Hofner, which sounded like a rubber band. Apparently, that was bad live.
We go back to our conversation about what you could buy that sounded good and decent. Kind of much more difficult in the early '60s than it is now.
But Paul picked that guitar because it was light. And it was it gave him the ability to play it like a guitar, because he's originally a guitar player. He didn't want this heavy hunk of wood.
No, completely. And weight, that old weight thing, isn't it? Look, it's really light, it's really small. I can get a sound I like out of it. Let's do that then.
So even back, in the early '60s, you had guys making, I suppose it's easy for you and I. Well, for people to say, well, these guys were only playing those guitars because that's what they had. That's what was available. Well, they actually, they were making choices.
I think they still make choices. I mean, because you could buy a Les Paul. When Cliff Richard bought Hank Marvin his first Les Paul in '58 or something. So they were here.
Yeah.
Expensive, but they were here, and I think that inevitably. Even then, you're talking about budgets, aren't you? You're talking about what you can afford, as a young guitarist coming through, and it probably isn't a Fender. It's actually probably
those wouldn't have been cheap, Simon.
No, I suppose not. No, that's true. Yeah, because they're American imports, of course, aren't they? So,
So they would have been an expensive guitar,
expensive alternative. No, that's true. Yes, actually, I'm wrong about that, but it is. But you're right. It's all about finding different sounds, isn't it? I don't want to sound like somebody. If I don't want to sound like Hank Marvin, so I better buy a different guitar so I don't sound like Hank Marvin.
Yeah.
I think that's taking out the. I think that's taking out the element of who's playing it. But I understand. That if Hank's playing one, maybe you don't want to. you want
So
a different
Ed's
sound.
making a connection about how he saw Buddy Guy playing a Strat, and it's the same thing. You know, he saw a record cover with
Yeah. Buddy Guy.
Playing a Les Paul Gold Top.
Yeah.
One of the Kings.
Freddie
Freddie
Buddy,
King. Yeah,
Freddie King. Was it Freddie King? Yeah. Freddie King. Yeah.
So he saw him playing a Les Paul. Okay, so he's in a music shop. Saw a Les Paul hanging there. I'll buy that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because my heroes play it. One of my heroes, Freddie King's played it. Yeah. You're right, Ed. They did listen to all the proper records and emulated those sounds. Yeah, and went over and over them, playing them again and stuff.
6 months he sat there with mail, listening to his blues records,
going through his blues collection, didn't he? Yeah.
Drinking coffee.
Yeah,
and they weren't on the booze back then. They were just religiously studying.
Yeah. You know what you could get out of those American blues records. 6 months. Yeah, if doing it every day, you get
those
stuff.
Guys have ADT, Simon. Those guys.
I don't know. I don't think it. I think it just. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's ADHD. I think it's just you get obsessed with something, you know, like we all could, you know, and spend hours, you know, messing about doing it, you know. So, you know, I think that the difference then is, of course, that they, you know, the way they could study it was by getting the records and playing them and then playing along to them and trying to work out what they were playing. And then, you know, you see. I'm very interested. You see a picture of somebody playing a guitar, and you go, "Well, that must be the sound, then, don't you? You know, that must, you know." So you go, you know, as you say, you know, you saw Freddie King playing a gold top. I'll go and buy a gold top, you know, because you think that's the sound. If he's playing that, that's what he's doing. You know, let's hope he was actually playing that.
Paul in his dragon suit. You know, I was 13 years old. You know, that was cool, Simon.
Certainly was. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, hung down really low.
Really low. Around his knees. Yeah.
You know?
Completely. Yeah. You know, leaning back.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. Oh, I understand the attraction. Oh, me too. You know. You know that attraction of playing like that and doing, you know. But I mean, all those guys as well. You know, Hendrix, all of them, you know, all that massively attractive, you know. So that's how you get that sound. You know, if you want to do, you know, the laid back Clapton, you know, 461 Ocean Blue, you're buying a Strat, you're buying a Fender, whatever, aren't you? Fender Twin, and off you go. You know, if you want to do.
What's really interesting before we knock off, I remember watching this DVD, and they were interviewing Slash. And I think it's a DVD about Jimi Hendrix, and Slash is saying that he tried with a Stratocaster playing through his Marshall, but it just didn't work. That he couldn't make that work.
No.
He had to play a Les Paul, to make it work. He wanted to play a Strat.
But yeah, I mean, that's back to the whole thing about what speaks to you, doesn't it? You know, you know, however iconic whatever Strat is or Les Paul, you know, if it doesn't speak to you and you can't make it work for you, then you can't play it. You know, so I mean, obviously for Slash, the Les Paul spoke to him. Les Paul Marshall, the other classic combination, spoke to him. So he went and did that, you know, and you know, apparently made something of a success.
It's interesting though when you hear a guy talk about that, because as guitar players we know exactly what he's saying. Like for example, I had a Blues Junior amp, and I just could not. It just didn't work for me. It didn't matter what guitar I had. And then when I swapped that for a Vox, the Vox was what I was getting closer to what I wanted.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. But, you know, and that's the kind of the search for your sound, isn't it? You know, you know, your kind of preferences and stuff. And I'm a long time Fender. You know, I've had my Fender Stratocaster for more than 30 years. You know, and you know, and that my PV Delta Blues that I've got, and I play that clean all day. you know.
But I've gone full circle now. I've got a Fender Vibrolux Reverb, so you know,
Nice. Yeah, beautiful.
You go through that trip, that journey.
Yeah.
To appreciate.
To bring you have to go for a journey. Yeah, I mean, I've told you this. Before my PV Turbos, I had a Hiwatt 100 watt with a 412
yeah.
Which was
awesome,
you know
amp, awesome amp, but
well, an awesome amp, but you know, because there was no way where you can play it unless you know it's Good Evening Wembley. You know, you not a hope of playing it above about 1.1. I mean, it was just hilarious. You know, it was a fantastic amp, but it was just so impractical. You know, headroom for days, whatever else you want. But it's like you can't play this. I can't play this anywhere where we're playing. You know, pubs and you know whatever. It's like. You turn it up to 5, you know, nobody would hear the rest of the band and probably demolish half the building as well. And the cab was so, I mean, the cab was made out of 1-inch ply, you know.
Wow.
I mean, you could have lived in it. You could have lived in it quite easily. If you'd wanted to. It's fantastic. It's you know, it was a brilliant thing, but it was just too mad, really. So I went for the, you know, the Fender clone, which was the PV, really. I mean, a PV, you know, Fender clone, but you know, with a 15-inch speaker, so it's a bit more bass. It was lovely.
Awesome. Hey, I'm going to get you to sign off for us, Simon.
Yeah. Quick. So
as you do.
So we say thanks to everyone in the chat, to the CIA. Thanks for joining, CIA. Sonia, of course. Thank you, Sonia. Jason Wade. Sleep well, Jason. It was late for you. And we've got Arvin. Thanks, Arvin, for popping in. Ed Wards as well. Thanks for dropping in, Ed. Hope you enjoyed the chat. And hopefully we'll see you at some point next week when we've worked out a day. It'll be this sort of time. Just which day?
Oh, yeah. We'll message each other during the week. Keep in touch.
Yeah. Cool. Lovely.
Awesome.
Enjoy your dinner.